Hi, this is Andrew from Cobalt Communication, and we're going to be looking today at Jill Bolte-Taylor's TED Talk called A Stroke of Insight. And this talk is again one of the most discussed presentations of TED, the TED conference ever. And it's about Jill Bolte-Taylor, who's a neuroanatomist, describing her stroke from the inside. And the presentation is just so beautifully structured that I think there are some real things that you can learn from this. Technical things that you can also use in your presentation. Now, don't be intimidated by Jill's story. Now, she's obviously telling an incredibly moving, very personal story about a big experience that she's had, and it's unlikely in your day-to-day work presentations that you're going to be telling something with quite that much power. However, there are some things that I notice as I look at this presentation that I realise make the telling of that story so compelling. One of the things is the storytelling. Now, the fact that she's telling a story that is so enormous, put that to one side and notice the way she tells the story. She tells the story with detail. She tells the story as she really takes her time moving from one part to another. And seeing as the story is the central part of her presentation, that really keeps us interested. Her story takes up about 10 minutes of the 18 minutes of the presentation. I noticed that although she is a neuroscientist, she very rarely uses a word longer than 2 syllables. No, she explains things in such simple language, and as a technical specialist, as someone who's going to be speaking to people often who aren't specialists in your area, that's really important to think about. They don't need the jargon, they don't need the technical terms, they need an understanding of the concepts behind the things that you're talking about. So she talks about the mental chatter in my brain switched off like someone had pressed a mute button. The pain inside my head was like when you've bitten into ice cream. She talks about the right hemisphere of the brain is a parallel processor, the left is a serial processor. And those are the kind of concepts that people can really grasp onto. And if she appreciates that some people don't understand what that means, those 2 concepts mean, so she explains them in simple language. Everything is incredibly simple, and I think this is one of the reasons why this presentation I've heard people from all sorts of walks of life talk about it. She uses curiosity really well, because she talks a little bit about why she went into become a neuroanatomist, and then she says, on the 10th of December 1996, I could not walk, talk, read, write or recall my life. And then she starts talking about the right and left hemispheres of the brain and starts going into the science, and we're like, there's this curiosity. She's opened an enormous question in our mind to go, what happened on that date? And she goes into all the background, sets the context, sets the framework for the information that you're going to be that you're going to need to understand. And if you can do that in a technical topic as well, if you can set the framework for people to understand, and also sometimes if you can set up to go, this is what you're going to learn, but first you move into the content and then give them, close the loop as it were, answer the question that you created, that can really create curiosity. Those of you who are graduates of our class, remember we talked about spatial anchoring, placing concepts physically in space, and Jill does this very well, very consistently. She uses the left half of the circle that she's standing in to describe the left hemisphere. She uses the right side of the circle to describe the right hemisphere, and she does this very systematically. She talks about dreams and reality and expansive and contracting. She uses her body to express her concepts. Now obviously you do that to your own cultural standard. She's American and is allowed to wave her arms around. Other of our cultures, we're a bit more subtle, but still notice how she systematically uses her gesture to describe the concept. And even I noticed that as I was watching, she uses a different voice. She uses a voice for one hemisphere and a voice for another, and so is separating things out using contrast. Her pace is lovely. So she speaks really slowly, especially in the important parts she slows down even more. So she uses slow pace to allow us to track the concept she's talking about. And finally, the best visual aid of any presentation ever, and so notice how that prop really draws your attention. And I've noticed this, that small props, physical objects used inside a presentation, and don't not in a cheesy way, but find a way, if you can find a physical prop that helps you explain something genuinely, people find that wakes them up. It's much more interesting than a flat slide behind them. So watch this. Enjoy the content of the presentation, but also notice the pace, the structure, the gesture, the energy levels that she uses in order to take very complex topics and make them simple. So this is Andrew Lightheart from cobaltcommunication.com, and enjoy Jill's talk.